Plants are some of the oldest magical allies that witches have. But plant magic is more than just looking up a correspondence and tossing an herb in a spell jar. There's so much more to it. How do we find the right plant to work with our intention? What's the difference between magical herbalism and medicinal herbalism? How can we work with the plants in our practice in a respectful and intentional way without needing to be an expert in herbalism? So tonight we are here talking about plant magic, how to find and build a more intentional and a respectful and spiritually connected relationship with the plants that you use in your practice. So merry meet, I'm Aislin, this is Ask Aislin. Tonight we're here with Plant Magic for Witches. So if you're with us live, say hi in the chat. Let us know that you are here. As always, we'll have a Q&A at the end, and I will answer any questions that people have, but I'll also be watching the chat as we go. So I'm going to dive in. We have a lot to talk about tonight, and so we're going to begin with what is plant magic, and then from there we're going to look at the differences between magical and medicinal herbalism to clear up any confusion between those, and then we're actually going to get into how can we use the plants, what are some specific plants that we might even have around our houses that we can use, and there will also be a nice spell that you can use at the end to help you connect to one of your plant allies. So we're going to start with what is plant magic. So plant magic is not just, like I said in the intro, it's not just tossing an herb into a jar and or looking up, this plant means this thing. There's so much more. It's a relationship that we build with plants. It's a relationship that contains many things, including the symbolism of those plants, their energy, their spirit, the folklore that might be tied and connected to those plants, and also the intention that we're using, and also the personal relationships that we may have built with plants just throughout the course of our lifetimes. Now, if we define it very simply, plant magic is using plants or any parts of plants like herbs, flowers, trees, roots, seeds, fruits, or resins, woods, oils, any of the parts of the plants, using those or even using the plant spirits themselves in our rituals, in our spell work, in our divination, our offerings, or in just simply in our regular spiritual practice. So plants can be worked with in many ways, and there's many different reasons that a person might work with a plant, and there are many different aspects of that plant that we might work with. So sometimes it's the physical presence of the herb itself, just having the flowers nearby or having that physical herb on the altar. Sometimes it's the scent of the plant that we're interested in and the changes that it might create in us. Sometimes it might be the color or the texture that we're interested in, or it could be the planetary or the elemental associations of that plant. Sometimes it is, there's the physical presence of having the herb actually sitting there in front of you, but sometimes it's the spiritual essence of that plant that we're more interested in. And then sometimes it's the personal relationship that we have developed or the memories we have of that plant. And we'll get into all of these different ways that we might use the plants. Now, when we work with plants as witches, we're not just using them like ingredients in a recipe. So it's not just like tossing a bunch of things in without really thinking about what they mean and where they come from. We're working with their spirit, we're working with their meaning and their symbolism, and we're also combining all of that with our intention. So if it is felt like magical herbalism is a difficult concept to grasp, whether you're newer to it or you've been on the path for a while, it's okay. I'm hoping after today's episode it'll clear up a lot of things, and it can be really simple, and you can start in a simple way, and you don't have to know a lot. And when you do need to know more, you can always ask experts and get guidance at those points. So that kind of brings me into what is the difference between magical and medicinal herbalism. So there's two different things. They can seem related, and it is true that many witches who work with herbs in their magic also would like to work with their herbs medicinally. But let's just kind of clear up any confusion between what are the differences between the two. So magical herbalism I should say I'm going to start with medicinal. Medicinal herbalism asks us a question. What is this plant or this part of the plant that we're going to use? What is it going to do inside of our body or on our body? But what is it going to do to our physical body? Now, on the other hand, magical herbalism asks us, well, what does this plant symbolize? What might it shift in us? What might it attract towards us? What might it protect us from? What might it help us banish? Or what might it help us embody? So the question is very different. Medicinal herbalism tends to be more about your health, whereas and magical herbalism tends to be more about other things. So health could be part of a magical herbalism spell or practice or intention. So here would be an example with an herb that you probably have in your house, rosemary. Rosemary is a mild analgesic. It has phytochemicals inside of it that can improve eyesight, that can regulate liver function, and can freshen your breath. It can be used to clear or clean dandruff. It can be used to stimulate hair growth. So there's a lot of reasons, very good for circulation as well. So there's a lot of reasons why a person medicinally might be choosing rosemary, right? But magically in our spells, rosemary can be used. You can see some similarities here. It will be used in cleansings. It might be used in protection spells. The intentions of rosemary are often going to be revolving around our memory or gaining clarity or maybe ancestral remembrance. Sometimes people use rosemary to help them recover memories of ancestors. So if you're using rosemary medicinally, you might be taking it internally. You might be using the oil on something on your skin, for example. If you are using it magically, you're likely going to put it into a charm bag or a sachet or a spell jar, or maybe you would use it as a candle dressing. So one of the things that I do want, before we move on, which the remainder of this episode will be strictly about magical herbalism, but one of the things I wanted to mention here is just to be cautious and very clear about the distinction here. If you want to use an herb to treat something physical, it's probably in your best interest to find an expert, so someone who is an expert at medicinal herbalism, or this could be a naturopathic doctor who they're always well versed in herbs. Consider taking medicinal herbalism classes yourself if you want to treat physical things. Natural does not necessarily mean that something is safe. So sometimes you get this idea, oh, well, it's an herb, it's natural, it must be okay. But some herbs can interact with medications in ways that you would never even know. Some herbs aren't safe for certain conditions. Some herbs are not safe. And this is mainly when we're ingesting them or we're touching the oils in particular. Some may not be safe for pregnancy or safe for women who are nursing or breastfeeding, might not be safe for children or pets. Essential oils are also very, very concentrated. So if we're going to be using them on our skin medicinally, most of the time they need to be cut with some kind of a carrier oil. So one of the things I wanted to tell you, and then again, like I said, the rest of this episode is all magical herbalism. But one of the things I wanted to tell you about is myself. I've practiced herbalism for many, many, many years. Going back, probably I came to sort of medicinal herbalism before I came to magical herbalism. But I do not consider myself a master herbalist. I've taken some courses, but there's a lot for me still to learn. And so I've tried to treat many of my own ailments throughout the years, and most of the time things work out just fine. Most of what we would use would be pretty safe. Lavender tends to be quite safe. Rosemary is very safe. All these herbs that you might have in your home. But in my quest to get pregnant naturally, came across, I had a fertility coach who got onto this tea, and it was called blessing tea. And you had to order this tea. It would come in these big 2-liter jugs, and you would have to order it from some place in Florida, and they would send these big jugs of it to you because I guess they couldn't tell you how to make it at home yourself or just add water to it. So these big jugs would have to be ordered, and it would cost hundreds of dollars to do this. And this particular coach of mine, she swore by it. She said that people would get pregnant when they were using it. Not only that, the people who sold it had like some really outrageous claims, like that it was curing cancer. I was able, because most of the time they will tell you, they may not tell you how much like the parts of each thing would be, but they have to legally tell you what the ingredients are. I was able to find the ingredient list. I looked it up. I was able to purchase all the herbs. And then I had Beth, who knows a little bit more about herbalism than I do. I had her put it all together, and then I began drinking this tea. This tea had a lot of root in it, and we're going to talk a little bit later about different parts of herbs magically, but medicinally as well. Different parts of herbs can have different effects on the body, and sometimes roots can be really heating. At least these roots that I was working with in this tea. And then this huge amount of tea that I had to take eventually got my hormones so out of balance that I was overheating because of the how hot, like not temperature wise, but like the heating quality of these herbs, probably also interacting with some of the other supplements that I was taking, and I got really sick. And that is actually the good news with this story, is that this eventually led me to my relationship with my naturopath, who I've been with for many years now, and I trust her. And there's two different naturopaths I work with, but I trust them both tremendously to tell me and recommend different herbs that will work for me. But taking something in such huge quantities, taking it internally, a bunch of different kinds of herbs that you've never heard of, or maybe you only briefly heard of them, this can be dangerous. It has a good end to the story because I got help, but I was really in bad shape when I was taking that tea, and it started to really dawn on me. I think this tea is doing the reverse of what it's supposed to be doing. So I just give you that story just as a caution, and we're going to kind of end this segment on like what's the difference between magical and medicinal herbalism. But if you are interested in learning more about medicinal herbalism, there are lots of great courses you can take, and maybe even consider getting a certification yourself if you get really into it. So let us know too in the chat. I'm going to go to the chat for now, and then I'm going to go into we're going to shift into the magical herbalism part of the episode. But tell us in the chat, do you work with herbs medicinally or magically? Do you work with both types of kind of herbal work? Have you taken a course in medicinal herbalism? Have you ever had any experiences of, taking something medicinally that didn't suit your body, or, had some bad side effects? I'm somebody who's always into, like, if there's an herbal or a natural remedy to something, I would always prefer that over something kind of modern medicine, but with the guidance of my naturopath, because I certainly have learned my lesson. Now, when it comes to simpler things like lavender, I have no problem with that. Simple herbal remedies, I don't have issues with that, but it's taking large quantities of things internally that you may not know very much about. But share in the chat. Let us know if you've ever had any experiences like that. Let me see if I can open the chat up too, because I'm having trouble seeing it. And can't see it at all. Okay, well, hopefully the chat will show up for me in a moment. Oh, there it is. Okay, now I can see some people. So Merry Meet to Christy, who is here, and Angie and Debbie, Merry Meet Andrea and Jenny. So Angie said she really doesn't have much experience with medicinal at all. She said unless you include the tea that you buy at the store. Yeah, and those are generally considered safe for most people. Like if you're just buying herbal teas in the store, with the exception of, like, I always look at the packaging. A lot of times it will tell, like, if a person was pregnant or they were nursing or something like that, or maybe if they had a certain condition, it might warn you. But otherwise, the vast majority of those teas are going to be just fine. But Angie said that's her kind of the extent of her medicinal herbalism, for the very reasons that I listed, is because, it can be, it's medicine, it's medicine. And there's a reason why people go to school or train for this. My friends who are master herbalists, they have gone to extensive training for this. And, those are the people I would go to if I needed some answers, rather than just using my kind more limited. My expertise is probably much more in the magical side of herbalism. Christy says medial. She said, I grow my own lemon balm, and lemon balm is, again, like one of those really safe herbs that tends to be safe for most people. So working with those kind of things, I wish I could remember some of the names of these herbs that were in this tea, this blessing tea that we made, because you would not have heard of many of them, and that was probably the first kind of red flag. Is like that should probably have been run by one of my master herbalist friends before going forward and consuming as much of it as I did. Now, Debbie says she has mostly medicinal experience. She said, I've been making my own balms and oils. I usually write out on the container what condition it helps with. Also, if it helps to banish or to attract something. And then she said, especially if it's related to mood. Yeah, very good. And then Nancy said, I've been working with herbs for 2 years now, and I'm taking a medicinal herbal class now as well. Awesome. Yeah, I highly recommend it. It's one of my goals in life eventually is to take like some really extensive medicinal herbalism classes. Okay. And then Nancy was saying like making salves and tinctures. So like these are all the ways that are very safe to be doing medicinal herbalism, as opposed to my crazy story of this blessing tea, which by the way, you had to drink like so much of it too. I think that was half the problem. And then consuming all these kind of strange herbs, and like a lot of roots is what I had mentioned as well. Okay, so keep it coming in the chat. If you have any, tell us some of your other experience with medicinal herbalism. And let's go on and let's talk about magical herbalism now, which is what the rest of the episode's going to be about. So, how would witches use herbs magically? Well, the good news here is because we're not really consuming them, with the exception of a few. Most of the time when we're consuming herbs, it's going to fall most of the time into the medicinal side of it. As far as magical herbalism goes, you might consume herbs, but most of the time you're going to be working with the plant essence. You're going to be putting it into spells. You might just literally have the plant near you on your altar and be in its presence. So how could we use herbs magically as witches? So first off, our spell ingredients. So we can place the herbs in spell jars, for example. We can place them in charm bags or in sachets. We can use them in candle spells. So one of my favorite ways to use herbs magically is to take a candle, to dress the candle with some kind of an oil and we'll talk a little bit later about, how to determine the certain herbs to use for your intention, but I would have an intention, and then I would pick an oil that was suited for that intention. I would dress the candle by rubbing the oil into the candle, and then usually what I'll do is if I have other herbs I want to use, I'll sprinkle them on a piece of paper, and then I will roll the candle in those herbs. And now not only do I have the oil, but I also have the herbs. And in my opinion, the herbs are simply, and the oil, they're adding to what's already there. We already have a candle. We could have just done candle magic, but the herbs help to work as a catalyst. To me, they bring in extra energies that might be associated with planets that you want to work with, or elements, or certain intentions, or deities, or you name it. And then we have this extra element or extra thing that we're bringing into the candle spell. There is a spell we're going to talk about at the end, which is more like this petition spell. So petition spells are typically where you write something down. You then usually burn it and kind of offer the petition to the universe. Sometimes people will rub herbs or oils into the paper. And so herbs and oils can be used to dress the petition paper as well. Herbs and oils could be used in poppets. So if you've never made a poppet before, poppets are really nice for any intention, but really good for health, because you can make a poppet and have it symbolize either you or a person that you're trying to work magical healing around. And you can fill that poppet with herbs of healing, or herbs that are particular or connected to the type of healing that person needs. They never need to consume the herbs. We just simply have them in this poppet doll. Herbs and oils could be used, or any parts of the plants could be used in altar bowls, simply to have that presence on your altar. They could be used in ritual baths or showers. So if you don't have a bathtub, like I don't have a bathtub, so what I can do is take cheesecloth, put the herbs in it, and then kind of hang it from the shower head. And then you can, the smell and the scent of those herbs will be in the shower with you. If you don't have a bathtub, that's always a good choice. Floor washes, simmer pots. There's so many different things that we can do. Herbal sprays. So we can put uh, essential oils or the plant herb itself into water. You could put it into witch hazel. It's a good thing I've been doing with like witch hazel and then putting rosemary oil into it. It's really nice for your hair. Now that is more of a medicinal side when I'm talking like that way. But let's say I wanted to then infuse it with some kind of an intention, then I would start to move into the more magical side of using the herb. Herbs can be used in incense blends. They can be used as offerings to deities or land spirits or nature spirits. They can be used in wreaths or bundles. So like that's essentially what the sage bundle is that people will often use for cleansing or smoke clearing. There are many other herbs besides sage that can be used in those bundles as well. Or you can form wreaths out of the herbs that particularly dried herbs probably. Dream pillows, threshold protection. So sprinkling salt or a salt blend with some herbs crushed into it across the threshold can also be a good way to use our herbs. There's so many ways to use them. So I'd love to hear in the chat. Let us know, how do you use them? Have you used some of these methods before? Are there any on the list that you're kind of interested in now that you're hearing about them? We will be going into more detail in a bit. But remember, the important key here is that none of these methods require us to ingest the herb, so we never really have to worry about that, right? So that is kind of an overview of how we could use them in some kind of a magical working. Now let's go a little bit more specific now. How about using herbs in cleansings or for protection magic, for example? So plants are often used to clear space, to clear energy. Essentially, that's what smoke cleansing does. The smoke cleansing itself, sage itself, is a herb that tends to increase the vibration of the energy in that space. So when you lift the vibration of the energy in the space, energies that vibrate at lower vibrations are kind of forced out, or maybe it's kind of gentle, but they're moved out because they don't vibrate at the vibrational energy of that the space is at currently. So plants can be used to, clear the space, bless the space. They can be used to guard a space or to mark a space as sacred. So sometimes we think we can, we have to like use a traditional method of casting a circle. For example, casting our circle with an athame or a wand or something like that. But herbs can also be used to cast a circle, for example. So you could have sage or another type of herb. Like one of the ones I really love using is mugwort. In fact, we send it to like everyone who initiates into our coven. We send them a bundle of mugwort because I think it's so good for getting you into the mind space of sort of the spiritual realm. It can help people with their dream work. It can help people with their psychic connection. It can help people just with like ritual mindset. So for example, like let's say you are somewhere and you just want to quickly cast a circle, you could quickly just cast it through smoke. And that is clearing the space and then making that space sacred. So some common herbs, and then we will go a little bit later. We're going to go into like a little bit more extensive list, most of which you'll probably already have at home. And some of you will already know what these are for. And some of you are newer, maybe don't know what they're for. Rosemary, most of us probably have that somewhere in the house. Rosemary can be used for cleansing. Pine can be used for purification or for resilience. So we'll talk a little bit more about like the evergreens when we talk about the parts of plants later, but evergreens, because they never lose their green color and they never lose leaves, They are considered, from a spiritual perspective, they're considered very resilient, a sign of the goddess, a sign that the goddess never dies, that the spiritual world is always there, even when things around it are appear to be dead or frozen over. The pine is still there, so it can be used in a magical sense for intentions of resilience. Basil can be used for blessing, harmony, protection, money. It's all good money draw. Lemon peel is good for cleansing and freshness. Lemongrass, similarly with lemongrass. Black pepper can be used for banishing and warding. And any of these herbs could essentially be burned if you would like. If you want to crush herbs up and burn them yourself, you can crush them up, and then you can get the little charcoal discs and you can place them on that. You can kind of make your own incense and offerings that way and burn them that way. But there are also plenty of smoke-free options that you can use if you are working with herbs. For example, some people can't burn things indoors. Some people just don't have the means to it, or they're allergic to it, or someone in the household is allergic. So you can always do simmer pots, but if you don't, which is not burning, you're still going to release the scent into the atmosphere. So if that's what you want, but you don't want to burn, a simmer pot could be a really good choice. Some people can't do that. Then you can use sprays like we talked about earlier, or like a floor wash, or you could do a salt or herb bowl. So lots of different options. The other thing that people will often forget about is that you can still work with the herbs, even if you can't do any of these things. Your magic in your mind is much more powerful than you can ever imagine. And you can tap into the essence of that plant or that herb or that flower simply through visualization or simply through just the intentions of your mind. So you might try working with a plant that way. Sometimes people find that it's easier when they're first starting out to actually have the plant physically in front of them and then work towards like connecting to it. So closing their eyes, and just as you would connect to another person or an animal, seeing if you can connect into the essence of the plant, and even asking it questions like, what do I need from you? Or can you help me with? But you can also imagine yourself, but through connecting to that herbal essence, you can imagine that kind of energy helping you to change things in the etheric plane. So it doesn't have to be all this stuff all the time. And let's say there's an herb that's really hard to find and you really want it. Well, number one, if you're having a hard time finding herbs locally, you can always try online sellers. I'm on a little tangent. I'll get back in just a moment. I particularly like Rose Mountain Herbs because everything there is ethically sourced. But and if you have some kind of local apothecaries or witchy stores, sometimes some of them, if there's somebody there who's like well versed in herbalism, they will have a lot of herbs. But let's say you can't find an herb and you really want a specific herb, you could attempt to connect to that plant's essence on the etheric plane, and that can be another way to work with it if you can't find it. And then simply just sometimes you don't even have to do anything with the herbs, just placing the herb. If you do have the physical herb, just placing it on your altar, on your deck of tarot cards, or nearby the space where you're working can also be a way to work with the plant energy. I'm just going to go back to the chat for just a moment, and let me see. It's not showing me a lot right now. Okay, sorry. I'm just trying to go. There's a lot in the chat. I'm just trying to go back here. So, so Jenny said, I have studied herbalism for many years. She's the one I was thinking about when I said I have friends. One of the ones I was thinking about when I said I had friends who've studied for a long time. She said and she continues to work with them all the time. She does infusions, which are a strong tea, adding herbs to food. It's her go-to. She said, if I need more herbal or medical support, I will do that too. And then she said tinctures, teas, and salves are staples in my cabinet. Angie said, I'm fascinated by herbalism and I'd love to take classes, but I don't know what places are actually trustworthy places and won't just take my money. So that's a good question. If there's anybody too, like who can offer where they took their medicinal herbalism classes, it's always, those recommendations are always very good. I personally don't have any to give right now, but if anybody in the chat has anybody watching later as well, if you have some good places where you took your herbalism classes, let us know, especially medicinal herbalism. Nancy said the newest wormwood tincture that I just made is absolutely dreadful. She said it tastes horrible, but I can never pronounce this. Pau de Arco, I know I'm not pronouncing it right, is a lot easier to get down. I've taken that as a tea before. But yeah, sometimes, and again, Nancy is somebody who's taken many classes, so she knows a lot about medicinal herbalism, which is why she's taking them internally, and also can say when some are just absolutely dreadful and she can't get them down. Debbie said how to use moon water, and how about in your moon water? So yes, absolutely. You can absolutely put herbs in your moon water, totally. Angie said, I made a dream pillow ages ago. She said I was like 19 or so. You could always make a new one too. I like to kind of refresh the herbs as well from time to time, especially if it's something that I want to use again or like kind of return to. Debbie says she puts sage near her door for protection. Great comments here. Okay, I'm going to go back, but I will return to the comments in just a moment. Okay, so offerings and devotion. So another way that we can use herbs in our practice is offerings to deities or a devotional practice. So we can use herbs as offerings to deities, to ancestors, to our beloved dead, to land spirits, which are oftentimes not the same as your ancestral spirits, because likely the land you live on, it was not your ancestral homeland usually. But if it was, land spirits and ancestral spirits will often be the same. But if you know that the land that you live on is not your ancestral land, which is most of us, it's worth looking up. Like, what were some of the traditional offerings that were used to the land spirits of the land that you live on? And then those can be offerings that you make. Household spirits, the spirit of the plant itself. You can make offerings to the plant itself. An offering does not have to be rare or expensive. Sometimes people think it has to be this rare thing or this thing that we put a lot of work into it. What I recommend is if you want to make herbal offerings to your deities, look up, do some research on those deities, find out what kind of offerings they prefer. Same like I said with the land spirits, do a little research on what were the traditional offerings to spirits of the land that you live on. Also, don't be afraid to use intuition. I think this is an important key, probably more important than I'm going to make it out to be in this episode, but I think your intuition goes a lot further than you imagine. So sometimes we get very stuck with like, I don't know what a good offering would be, and we don't really listen to our intuition. To me, I've received some interesting insights when I've actually listened to the spirits themselves of the things that they wanted. I've told the story about the fairies in my yard who like beach sand, just strange things like that. No book was ever going to tell us that. It was the fairies themselves who did that. So, when it comes to offerings, when it comes to a lot of the things that choices that you're going to bring into your spell work, really do think like, what does my intuition say? And then after you check in with yourself, then you can do some of the research and do the looking up. I will let you know, and I'll talk about this at the end, there's going to be a future episode coming up on offerings, and we'll get a little more into this, like how would you work with your intuition in order to determine offerings for the deities you're working with. But don't be afraid to use your intuition when it comes to offerings. So we've already talked a little bit about divination and dream work, but plants can very much support our intuitive work and our work at the liminal spaces. Mugwort, I've already mentioned, is one of my favorites. Mugwort can be used for dreams and divination and psychic opening. It's really nice as an herbal bundle. And I don't really recommend that people necessarily take it internally unless you have experience in that or you're working with an experienced master herbalist. But you don't have to take it internally. You can use it as smoke from the herbal bundle, or I know a lot of people will put it in a dream pillow or put it somewhere near the bed, something near their bed so that they can smell it. For example, I suppose you could also get the dried herb, and then you could put that into some kind of a water based spray or something like that, or the witch hazel I was talking about earlier. But using mugwort around the space when you're going to do psychic work or dream work can be very, very, very helpful. Lavender is another great herb, very, very safe for the vast majority of people. It's good for sleep and peaceful dreams. You can often get a lavender spray just at the drugstore or CVS or something like that. You could spray your pillow, spray the bed, spray around you. Lavender oil is not all oils are great to put on your skin without being cut first, but lavender oil, in my experience, is safe to just put on your skin. So sometimes I will literally just put a bit on my skin. But it can be very good for helping you to have peaceful dreams, especially if your dreams have been a little bit crazy or you're having nightmares. Try some lavender at bedtime and it might help. Rosemary can be good for helping you to remember your dreams. It's also good for helping ancestral messages to come through. So again, do research, extensive research on anything you plan to ingest. But then outside of that, these sprays and like dream pillows can be a really good way to work with the herbs for sleep. Now, the herbs could also be placed near you. Like if you want to use them with divination, you can place the herbs near you on top of your tarot cards or whatever divination tools that you're using. And that is a way that you would work with the plant spirit itself, and not necessarily the plant matter, but the spirit, and just calling in the spirit of rosemary to come and to aid me in remembering something about my ancestry, perhaps, or calling in the spirit of mugwort. Sometimes people are very allergic to things and they're very hesitant to use any of the herbs at all. And so I think the calling in of the plant spirit can be a good option for people. Like there's always ways to work with herbs, no matter who you are, what kind of a witch you are, or the different allergies or ailments or things that you might have. There's always going to be a way to work with plants and their energy. Okay, so where do the plant correspondences come from? Well, some come from folklore. Sometimes it's hard to know where the correspondences come from. Now, as far as medicinal, so I'm just going to like kind of go into that area for just one moment. So when it comes to medicinal herbs, most of this is coming through extensive, sometimes centuries of research that herbalists and medicine women and men did over, like I said, centuries of time. And so just like we know, how to use penicillin today, it's the same way we know how to use some of these herbs because people have used them in practice in medicine for many, many centuries. When it comes to the magical side of the correspondences, well, where do those come from? Well, sometimes it comes from folklore. Sometimes there's kind of a fine line between the magical and the medicinal. And you'll kind of see that in the way that we use herbs too. So like perhaps let's think about like rosemary, for example, or actually let's think about lavender, for example. So lavender is sometimes used for people who have headaches. So that's going to be a medicinal way that they use it. But they might then be using lavender also magically in spells. So sometimes a witch might use both, right? But where do those correspondences come from? Well, some of them are coming from the medicinal knowledge that we already know, and then those kind of extend into like our magical universe. But there's other ways that herbs might get their correspondences. So one of them might be color. So for example, Herbs that are red are often associated with passion, with courage, and with desire. Herbs that are white are often associated with cleansings and blessings, peace, and spirit work. Herbs that are yellow often have a solar connection to them, and they might also have the intentions of joy, communication, and success, and other things that are connected to solar energy. Herbs that are purple might be connected to intuition and psychic work. So it's also important to not forget the colors of the chakras. So everything that is red has some connection in some way to the root chakra, at least when it comes to, at least from the perspective of like Ayurveda, for example. So you might, if you're somebody who really likes color, you might think about the colors of the different plants and how that affects the plants that you choose and the ones that you're going to connect to your intentions. The shape and the growth pattern of the plant part can also play a role in where its correspondences come from. So roots, they tend to be connected to spirit, to stability, to ancestry. I mean, just think about what roots of a plant are. They stabilize it, right? And our roots are like, they go back to like the people who came before us. The roots of many plants might be connected to our health, to our security, or to things that are hidden. So they could be used in shadow work to draw things up from the unconscious. On the other hand, let's say like seeds, for example, seeds are often connected to beginnings, to potential, to fertility, and to future growth. So a plant itself has all of these things. It has roots, it has seeds, it's going to have leaves. Sometimes it might have vines or some of these other things we're going to talk about. So it is going to also be, when it comes to our magic, it can be important that part of the plant that we're using, and lavender leaves are going to be different than lavender flowers. Thorns can be used for protection, boundaries, or defense, just like you would imagine they would be. Vines for connection. They might be used in binding magic or in attaching us to someone or to something. Evergreens, we talked earlier about the idea that they never lose their leaves and they never lose their color. And so they're often connected to resilience and protection. And then flowers are often connected to attraction and beauty and blessings and offerings. So another thing to think about in your magic, once you settle on the plant that you want to use, well, what is the part of that plant that you'll be using? There's also oftentimes, so this could go into a whole other episode on itself, getting into sort of the planetary and the elemental connections to certain plants. So I'm just going to briefly just mention it. And then if you become interested in it, I would just do a little more research on this. Solar plants or plants that are connected to the sun will often be used for confidence and success, vitality, joy, visibility. Whereas lunar plants and plants connected to the moon would be used for dreams, intuition, emotions, or psychic work. And then when it comes to the elements, there are some plants that we consider to be more fiery than others. So like cinnamon or basil, for example. And these plants tend to be very warming and protective, motivating and activating. And so if you have an intention where you need motivation, you need to get some fire going in you, then you might choose a plant or an herb that is connected to the fire element. Watery plants like water lily or hyacinth or lotus, they can be used in healing, grief, emotions, dreams, and love. So totally different than the fiery plants. Earthy plants are often used for money, stability, protection, things associated with the physical body, and these might be like patchouli or vetiver or valerian. And then there's airy plants and plants connected to the air element, like dandelion, lavender, and lemongrass, and these could be used for communication, thought, or clarity. So what I love about correspondences is they create a language for you to use. And it's not just about memorizing. I'm a big believer in having correspondence books, and I'm going to share a few at the end of my favorite ones that I use for herbalism. But you can make so many different connections. You'll start with your intention, and then from there you kind of could decide, well, what element is most connected to this intention, and then from there that element can help you to decide what type of herb or plant that you would be using. So a lot of ways that we can work with this. And then, of course, the thing that we should never forget is that you may have a personal relationship with the plant. And while our correspondences are very helpful, they are not going to be the only or the final authority on this. So your personal relationship with a plant is also going to be important, and it also matters. So for example, if your grandma grew basil, then you're going to associate basil. Well, if you like your grandma, you're going to associate basil with home and ancestral connection and good things, right? And so basil would maybe a plant that you would go to when you're trying to do work around ancestry because you associate it with your grandma. On the other hand, if you have a negative association with a plant, you don't have to use it. So just because the books say, oh, well, this certain herb is good for this intention, well, if you don't like the herb and you don't like the smell of it, or there's something about it, you just have maybe you have a personal a memory that's a negative memory associated with that plant. Well, that's going to cause some issues in your magic. So we don't want to be using correspondences, or we don't want to use spell ingredients that we have some kind of a negative reaction to. So for example, for me, clove is a herb that's in a lot, like it's recommended in a lot of different spells. I see it all the time. People make things with clove. For me personally, I have been into the goth scene since I was a teenager, and I got into smoking clove cigarettes when I was about 18. And it took me a very long time to quit them. And to me, the smell of clove smells like those cigarettes, and it's going to be a very, very negative experience for me. So I just don't like clove, and I don't like it in cooking, and I don't like it in my magic either. So it's going to be really important for you to think about those things. What is your relationship, whether positive or negative, and your association with that plant? Okay, so I've already kind of talked about this, but I'm just going to go through a few more herbs that you might have at home. So especially if you're new to this and you're looking at your house, I bet you have a few of these and you can get started with some magical herbalism right away. And even if you guys have been doing this for a while, sometimes you hear something you've forgotten about and it's a good refresher. So like we mentioned, rosemary. We've talked about it a lot tonight. It's because it's such a good herb and it's very safe to use. Good for cleansing, protection, and clarity, especially if you're having trouble maybe getting clarity on a question. Maybe using rosemary around your divination tools too could be especially good. Maybe make it into a sachet. Basil, good for prosperity and protection, and it's often used in love spells as well in some traditions. Bay leaf is good for wishes and manifestation, writing your wishes on bay leaves and then burning them. Cinnamon is a good herb for speed and heat, so it's a really nice catalyst to add to something else. If you want to speed the spell up, adding cinnamon can be good. Cinnamon is also good for prosperity and attraction, so it's good in love spells as well. In fact, like Come To Me oil often has cinnamon in it. It's one of those strongest parts of that oil that you can smell. Mint is good for money, but also for clarity and communication because it can be considered an airy herb. Chamomile is good for peace, sleep, luck, and emotional soothing. Thyme is good for courage, purification, and strength. And I also think, despite the fact that thyme, the herb, is not spelled the same as time, the time on your watch, I do think that thyme can be used in spells relating to time. And using time wisely or slowing time down. So kind of an interesting way to use it. Black pepper is good for protection, warding, and banishing. So in that list, you've likely got perhaps 50% or more of those herbs already in your kitchen. So you already have the beginning of magical herbalism already in your house. So I guess the next question is, how would we choose the right plant for a spell? So let us know in the chat, those of you who use herbs in spell work, how do you go about choosing an herb for a spell? And then I'm going to give you some thoughts as well. But it's always nice for others to hear from those besides me who are using magical herbalism. So I think that, the first thing you're going to want to do is you want to consider what your intention is. So let's say a person has, I'm just going to start with the intention of protection because it's a common one. So people will say, I need a spell for protection, but protection means a lot of things. So same thing with like clarity. Well, clarity also can mean a lot of things. So let's go back to protection. Do you need protection for sleep? Do you need protection for travel? Are you trying to protect yourself from gossip that's been going on around you? Are you trying to protect your home? Are you trying to protect your children or your pets? Are you trying to protect your spiritual work? Are you trying to protect your boundaries at work or in other public spaces? So you want to really get as clear, like just basic spell work advice. You want to get as clear on the intention as you can, and then that will help start to guide you and steer you towards what you would do next for the spell. So after that, so once you get clear on your intention, then you can start to choose the plant. So you may have a connection already to a plant and your intuition tells you to use that one. So I would go with that. Otherwise, you can start looking at correspondences. So I will tell you that personally, my favorite author on magical herbalism is Scott Cunningham. And so who knows, 30 years ago I probably bought this book. So this is Cunningham's Encyclopedia of Magical Herbs. What I like about this book is that it is mostly correspondences. So there's like in the beginning they'll talk a little bit about like how to set intentions and different things like that. But the vast majority of this book will go through one by one different herbs and will tell you all kinds of things about that herb, including what it's used for, and let's see here, the planet it's associated with, the element. So if anybody's asking, well, how would you know if it's an airy herb? Well, you get a book like this and you have this. So like for me, this has complemented my classes that I've taken on magical herbalism over the years. I don't remember the correspondences of every single herb, so having this can be especially helpful. At the end of the book, I think what's also great is that while this goes one by one through the herbs, in the back of the book, there is a whole thing on, well, here's a whole thing on just like earth herbs, air herbs, what we were talking about earlier, and then it gets into the intentions. So if you have an intention, you just find that in the back of the book and it will list all the different herbs that you could use. So I really love this book, and I love it. I love Scott Cunningham so much. This is also another book, Magical Herbalism. This one does have some correspondences, but this is mostly more about like, here's talking about making certain kinds of incense. It's got more of the recipes in it. So I kind of like having both of these together. If you want to use, so this is Magical Herbalism by Scott Cunningham. He has a book, Magical Aromatherapy. So if you want to work with the oils instead of like, and you want to like use them in aromatherapy, this is also a good option, also by Scott Cunningham. And then I just happened to I could have pulled a ton of books off my shelf, but this is a book called The Secret Life of Plants. The author is Peter Tompkins, and like this book is so old. Like I think I got this when I was a kid, but it's just if you want to get deep into like the essence of plants, I highly recommend this book, and it will kind of change the way that you view plant energy as well. Now, if anybody else has other recommendations, please share them in the chat. Your recommendations always help all the other viewers out as well. But let me get back to what we're talking about. So now you kind of know your correspondences can come from these books or perhaps a class that you've taken. So you would want to choose your plant based on the correspondences correspondences or your feelings about it, or maybe the element or the planet that you want to work with, or perhaps you really like the scent, or perhaps you know that you want to work with like a root as opposed to flowers or something like that. So you're going to choose the plant next. So we choose your intention, refine your intention, and then choose the plant. And then once you've chosen the plant, then you need to choose the form of the plant that you'll be using. So are you using the flowers, the stems? Are you using oil? Are you using smoke? Is it going to be in a spray? Are you putting it in the bath, putting it in a charm bag? So you're going to look for not only the part of the plant you'll be using, but also the means of how you'll be using it. Again, I would say some of these people are very hesitant to do this because they're afraid they're going to do something wrong. But I really think some of the best spell work that you can do is just be called to it. Use the correspondence books. Let's say I want to do something to improve my memory. I'm going to use rosemary. I'm going to use rosemary flowers, for example, and then I'm going to put them in a sachet. So I don't have to overthink it. I don't have to really spend a lot of time with it. I just need to know my intention, get clear on it, pick the right herb, and then, pick the form of it I'm going to use and the means I'm going to use it through. And from there, that's about all you need to do. And you can always say some kind of little incantation around it, which to me, sometimes people are afraid. They're like, oh my God, I have to have the words from that somebody wrote in a book. You don't have to have the words that somebody wrote in a book. That's somebody wrote that. You can write that too. But if you continue to doubt yourself, there are some great, like I said, in these books in particular, there are spells and there are specific things that you can do in them. And then once you gain more confidence, you can try to write them yourself. Okay, so in the interest of time, I'm going to get through this last part, and then I have a little kind of spell that I want to share with you at the end that you can use to connect to a plant. So I just wanted to talk just for a moment about safety and ethics and just in respect in general of the plants. So like I mentioned, I've already kind of said this already. Not all plants are safe necessarily. Not all plants are safe to consume, for sure. Not all plants are safe to burn, so you do want to do a little research on the plants that you're using. The majority of the ones that I talked about today, in fact, I'm pretty sure all the ones I talked about today, the kitchen herbs are going to be safe. These are ones that people are cooking with all the time. But if you're going off and you're going to be using herbs that are a little bit more unusual, you just need to do that research on them to make sure that they're going to be safe for you to use in whichever way you're using them, right? Especially with the essential oils, what we have to remember is essential oils are not the same as the whole herbs. They're very, very highly concentrated. So even though the herb itself, like the plant itself, might be totally safe, once we bring it into an oil, it's so much more highly concentrated and stronger. We have to be careful. So a perfect example of this is cinnamon. Cinnamon will hardly bother anybody in cinnamon sticks or in the powdered form, but when you put it into an oil, it can cause inflammation on the skin. So you have to be careful with it because it's so concentrated. So, if you are worried again about, burning herbs or using them in unsafe ways or anything like that, remember you can always put them in sachets, you can put them in charm bags, in your spell jars, you can use them on your petitions, which was what we're going to use in this spell that's coming up. You can work with the living plants or the dried plants, just having that presence around you, and a lot of different ways that we can do it. And other things that, here's just a few other thoughts, as we're kind of wrapping up, is you can use like plant oracle cards, for example. If you want to get to know the plants a little bit better, or let's say you just don't have the means to work with the physical plant, you can get a deck of plant oracle cards and you can work with the plant spirit that way as well. The other thing we want to remember ethically is if you are harvesting the plants yourself, always remember to not over harvest. Just take the small amount that you need. Always ask the plant if it's okay. Ask the nature spirits. I like to offer something back if I'm going to take from something, in my yard or something I've come upon. If you are somebody who's going out kind of in the wild and harvesting things, Hopefully you have some training in it. If you don't have training in it, just make sure that you learn what's toxic to touch or burn, and just be really careful around the plants. Be mindful about endangered or over harvested plants. This is why I recommend sites like Rose Mountain Herbs, where everything's been ethically sourced. Here in California, white sage has been over harvested, and it is a sacred plant, and you're not supposed to take it if you find it on like public land anywhere. So what we did is we have a plant on our property that we've tended to, that we've grown, and then that's the one that we can use. That's just one example, but always kind of being mindful of plants that are endangered or over harvested. Use common kitchen herbs when you can, because they're easy and you already have them. And it's also important to just remember to build a relationship with the plants that you're going to be using, and then thank the plant, thank the land after you have used it, just like anything. So let's close with this small little plant ally charm. So this could be good. It's good, kind of a good end to this episode. And if you want to take this work a little further, here's something you could do this week. So all you're going to need is one small amount of the herb, flower, seed, or leaf that you're going to use. So if there's a plant that you're particularly interested in working with and you want to get to know that plant better, this would be good to choose that plant for this spell. Then you'll need a small piece of paper and a pen, and then optionally you could just have something nearby like candles, anything that helps you get into your kind of sacred space. So you want to choose the intention, like why are you getting connected to that plant ally? So what is it that you want your intention to be? Do you need protection, peace, courage, clarity? What is it that you need? Prosperity? And then you're going to choose the plant based on that intention, just like we were talking about earlier. So maybe rosemary for protection, or lavender for peace, or do a little research on it and choose the plant for your intention. And then you're going to write a petition to the universe. So I ask for, and then you're just going to write after that, what is it that you're asking the universe for? Protection? Is it clarity? Is it protection from people gossiping about you at work? Is it help finding a partner, a love partner? Is it protection for your children? Is it healing for yourself? So what is the intention that you have? You're going to write that, I ask for, and you're going to write that on the piece of paper. And then you are going to place the plant. So you've got the plant or the herb, and you're going to place that with the paper. In fact, what I would do is I would probably take the paper, write on it, place the herb on top of it. And then what I would probably do is I would then like fold the paper around the herb. Now, what you could do next, it's up to you, is you could burn it. You could just burn that. Petitions are often burned like that. You could also, if you would like to carry it with you and kind of keep the intention with you, you can fold the paper up with the herbs inside of it, and you could put that into a charm bag if you would like, and then that's something that you could carry. And you can make a charm bag, like make a sachet, very easily by just having a piece of cloth, putting the paper and the herbs inside of it, bunching it up together, and then tying it with a ribbon. And then I would recommend just speaking something out loud. So I'm going to give you a little incantation, but I recommend, you can use this absolutely, but if there's something more that resonates with you, just speak what comes to you. So you could say, after you've done all this, plant ally, leaf and stem, root and flower, seed and thorn, lend your virtue to this work. May this spell be clear and aligned with my highest good. So mote it be. And you could just say something like that, and then I would kind of decide what you're going to do next. So are you going to burn the paper? And if you're going to burn the paper, then you would burn it there. Do you want to place it on your altar for a while? Then you would do that. Do you want to carry it with you in the spell bag? Then you would do that. And it could just be a nice little way to sort of connect to that plant as well. And while you're doing that, if you want to kind of add something into the middle of it, you can take a few moments and close your eyes, and with the plant in front of you, just breathe in and out, and just imagine kind of combining your energy with the energy of that plant. and you can even ask questions like, what do you have to offer me, or what can I learn from you? And you'd be surprised. Sometimes people don't even try something so simple because they think it won't work, but you'd be surprised what can come out if you just take a few moments and commune with the plant and their energy, and you'll be surprised what might come out of it for you. So I hope that tonight's episode helped. So again, like you don't have to be a master herbalist, especially if you're doing magical herbalism. You don't have to have every book there is. You don't have to know and memorize every herb in the book. You could start with one plant. You could start with a couple of plants, really get to know them, learn about their folklore, learn about, their correspondences, learn about how they grow. Sit with the plant and kind of commune with it, like we talked about, and then really just pay attention to what changes in your self when you're in the presence of that plant, and that's really where plant magic begins. So I hope that helps. I am now going to go to the Q&A and let's answer a couple of questions. Oh my gosh, I'm way over time. So if you have any questions for me, put them in the chat. And it does not have to be about plants. I can answer questions about anything related to shadow work, witchcraft, or energy work. But I do have a couple of questions that were left for me this week. So I'm going to go to those really quick first, and then I'll go into the chat. So, okay, Aislin had a question. She said, is magic real? So, and I am going to I'm just going to note that magic, spelled Magic, is what the question says, is magic real? So some of you may know that there are different spellings for magic, and many magical practitioners will put a K on the end to differentiate the magic that we do with what we would consider parlor magic. So if we're asking about like Magic and we're talking about parlor magic, well, I would probably say a lot of it's sleight of hand. It's illusion, right? It's meant to, it doesn't mean it's not real, but it is meant to change our perception of things so that we might see things that weren't really there or not see things that are there. What Ailin's really asking about, I'm certain, is about the magic we talk about as witches. So I guess the question is, well, what does it mean to be real versus not real? So if we're talking about like Harry Potter kind of magic, flying on broomsticks and different things like that, most of us have not experienced those things, and I don't think that is the magic. Sometimes people have these perceptions that witches can change everything, and while I do believe that we can change great amounts of things, sometimes great change takes a long time, and it can be much more subtle than snapping fingers and being able to like change the way we look. But yet we do know there is such a thing as glamour magic, where over time we can change the way that people perceive us. So I 100% believe that magic is real. I mean, if you think about the definition of magic that many people will use. It is, let's see, Aleister Crowley said that it was the art, I wish I had pulled this up earlier to have the exact words of it, but the science and art of causing change to occur in conformity with will. And so if you look at that definition, the science and art of causing change to occur in conformity with will, essentially what it's saying is that you're changing something in the physical plane because you willed it to be so. So this is where we already know that our thoughts change things in the physical world. So in that respect, like at the very heart of all of it, magic isn't about all the things that we have. The herbs are great. We spend a whole hour talking about them. But at the end of the day, we just need our thoughts and our will. And in that respect, I do believe that magic is very much real, though I do think it's important to be mindful of our expectations with things. It's not all of our magic changes things really quickly or changes really big things very quickly. Sometimes it's subtly and over time. And sometimes magic, we put the intentions out there and what comes back can be different because sometimes we're not clear on what we actually need or what we actually want. So to answer the question, yes, I believe magic is absolutely real. Is it Hollywood show-stopping magic? Not all the time. In fact, probably not most of the time, but But I think anybody who's, ever done a spell and seen the results of it will tell you, yes, I absolutely believe that there's something here. The next question is from, oh my gosh, did I lose it? It's from Nicole. And she said, I've been trying some new things to amplify my spell work, like dancing while casting. Is there anything else that helps? And I love the idea that she's trying new things like dancing while spell casting. I think it's awesome. I think that movement is great when you're doing spell work. I personally love doing, I do Kundalini yoga and energy work all the time, but I love bringing it into my spell work as ways to raise energy. So just sitting and, making circles with your hips like this can be a fantastic way to bring movement into your magic and into your spell work. I think breath work is another really cool way. Bring that in. Try something like the breath of fire when you're raising energy. It's a totally different way of raising energy than a lot of us are used to. But I think that there are many different ways, like many different kind of ways to change an altered state, which is essentially what we're trying to do. We're trying to create an altered state of consciousness when we're doing magic. It gets us onto that etheric plane. That's the goal of it. And through that, it can be our breath work. It can be movement. That's why the dancing is working really well for Nicole. Trying drumming, trying even like holding your breath for a bit can be kind of interesting in the breath work. Deprivation of senses was what sometimes people will use. But there's a whole episode on, I think it's called 8 Ways to Alter Your Conscious in Magic. It's an episode I did a way while back. I will drop that in the comments afterwards if anybody wants to check it out. But it has some other ideas of how to kind of change your consciousness in magic, which can be some new things for people to try when they're doing their spell work. And then Rachel said, I have been neglecting my practice. She said, with school and work and life, everything else just took a back seat. She said, I almost feel like I need to start at the beginning again. How do you return after neglecting everything for so long? So good question, and one that I think that a lot of people are going to relate to. The world is crazy, and it's really easy to fall off of our practice. And sometimes it can make us feel like we need to return all the way back to the beginning. But just remember, all the things that you have learned, they're not gone. They're still in you. I think the best way back for a person who's really been neglecting it and doing like not really much of anything is to come back and try to establish some kind of a regular practice. And I would start very small and simple at first, 5 minutes, if that's all that you have. 5 to 10 minutes to kind of bring yourself back. Just start by doing something simple like pulling a couple of cards, doing some breath work, doing some movement. Some of the Kundalini energy work could be used, doing some candle gazing, doing like what we talked about tonight, kind of picking an herb and sitting with it and just like kind of breathing in and out with it. But I think the key back is the regularity. Once you actually step back on the path and you start doing something regularly, you will find that it changes everything very quickly. And then other doors start to open up back for you, and you'll find that, oh, now I've been doing my practice, maybe for a couple of weeks, and I've been doing it 5 or 6 times a week, 5 minutes at a time, and now I want to do something longer, or now I'm kind of stepping back into my witchcraft studies. But I would just recommend coming back slowly, but coming back regularly, and I think that is going to be the key to returning from a particularly challenging time when you haven't really been doing much of anything. And also just a note for Rachel, because she is in the Shadow Seekers membership, the course How to Do Shadow Work, it's a mini course in the Shadow Seekers membership, is a really good way to get you back in. It's like 5 hours of content, I think, but you can watch it in little bite-sized videos. Just watch that, and that can very much help you get back into setting up the practice, and before you know it, you'll be feeling like you're back on the path again. So I hope all of that helped. Let me go back into the chat. I'm like way over time, but see if there's any questions that I missed. And I will tell you too, I will go back and I will, when the recording's over, I will drop the links in the chat I said I would drop in, and I'll answer any of the questions I've missed here. Angie said, if anyone figures out how to fly on a broomstick, please let me know ASAP. Yes, that would be very cool, right? Right. Um, and Jenny said, yes, and gas is so expensive, so that would be good to know. Totally. Totally. All right, so just to let you know what's coming up next week on 6/2, I'm going to be off because my parents are in town. It's too much. It's not possible. Some of you know that I'm have to be partially in the broom closet because of them, so I just can't do the episode while they're here. So next week I'm going to be off, but I'll be back on 6/9 with an episode on giving offerings, how to the witch's guide to offerings. So if you've ever been wondering how to give offerings, what to give, what to do with it afterwards, the episode on 6/9 is going to be right up your alley. And then on 6/16 we're going to be talking about Litha and summer solstice, because that is right around the corner. All right, so leave a heart or a thumbs up somewhere in the recording. This will help us get this out to the feed of more people. And make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel, Body Mind Witchcraft, and that will help us also reach our goal of being monetized by the end of 2026. Plus, there's like over 100 episodes on there, and you can browse through the different topics and watch the episodes that are calling to you. And as always, it's always a pleasure to spend Tuesday nights with you. And until next time, blessed be.